Zelenskyy is offering us nothing. Like, just absolutely nothing. But yet he's sitting here demanding security guarantees. What we can hope for here is that Vladimir Putin puffed up his ego, Zelenskyy is pissing him off, and at some point Donald Trump, washes his hands of this mess.
It's time to pull the plug on the Ukraine war. At least that's what Dave Smith says. I'm inclined to agree, as many of my viewers know. But Dave also gets into why Zelenskyy has no room for negotiation. He has no leverage to negotiate with Trump or Putin, and what the prospects are for a peace to come to Ukraine anytime soon. Let's get his take on this. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel.
Look, I mean, this is, and I don't know, Rob. I mean, maybe this is just me, but it makes my blood boil. But I don't know. I just find, look, I mean, he's talking about security guarantees over and over again. I mean, this is his big thing from his position of no negotiating leverage whatsoever. There is nothing that he offered. Like, Vladimir Putin obviously has some negotiating leverage, right? Because he's conducting a war that we sure would like him to stop, and we have some negotiating leverage over Vladimir Putin because, like, we were the ones who were threatening to bring Ukraine into NATO, and he wants us to stop. And we were the ones who were sending weapons in, and he'd like us to stop. So, like, there's some negotiation there. Zelenskyy is offering us nothing. Like, just absolutely nothing. But yet he's sitting here demanding security guarantees. And, like, what is that? I don't know. Like, what does that mean? Like, a security guarantee. It's like, if you think about it in a way, right? Nobody is God. So nobody can give you a guarantee, like a real guarantee, right? Like, that doesn't actually mean anything. If I were to say to you, Rob, like, I guarantee your security, then what you would take that to mean is, like, to the best of my ability, I will try to protect you or something like that. You know what I mean? But, like, that's all I could do is try to fight the guy who's fighting you. And if he's tougher than me, then my guarantee is meaningless. But, like, there is something where, like, I think like, like, if someone tried to hurt my wife or my kids, I would do everything within my power to protect them. But then just, like, some random other lady in my town goes, I also demand a security guarantee. You're like, wait, what?
Yeah, I mean, that's the America First strategy, is to take care of your own first. And hey, it's asking an awful lot from Zelensky's standpoint to ask the entity that's bankrolled him to the extent of $200 billion to give him a security guarantee in the future. And what that is, in case you're not familiar, is it's essentially like NATO in a nutshell. It's a microcosm of NATO. It would be like a unilateral agreement. It might include other powers too, to say, Ukraine, if you're invaded in the future, after this peace takes place, will intervene militarily in your favor. But Putin won't accept that anyways, because it would be just window dressing and come up with the same type of arrangement that NATO is in the first place, especially if you had powers like France and Germany and, Britain and the United States acting in tandem to provide this guarantee. It doesn't even seem like it's feasible from the perspective of Putin, who essentially is in the driver's seat here. He wants Ukraine to be neutral. He's wanted Ukraine to be neutral for about 20 years. That's what he's always said he wants to be consistent about.
Position to demand that I get into a fight over you. Like, that's my choice, not yours. And so I do just find this to be appalling. I also, think, this is where Donald Trump really messed up with that whole mineral deal and all that talk, is that Donald Trump basically has, it is crazy that we're this far into Donald Trump's presidency. Like, we're almost at the end of August. He's been president since January, and he still has not, like, extinguished this idea that we're going to give Ukraine a security guarantee, that we're not only going to say, hey, we're going to help you negotiate an end to this war after helping you fight this war for 3 years, but we're going to say, hey, if you ever get in a war in the future, we're on the hook for it.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, he's right. There's other reasons the minerals deal was retarded too, including the fact that Russia occupies most of the territory with the mineral deposits that Zelenskyy tried to leverage to win Trump's favor to continue supporting and funding Ukraine, which worked somehow. Trump did stop funding for about 6 days and restored it. But Dave's right. He should have shut the door on any kind of security guarantee a long time ago. And let's be real, the U.S., used Ukraine as its, vessel to wage this war, to empire build, to extend its arms into Eastern Europe. So, I actually do have sympathy for the Ukrainian people caught up in this mess, especially those that oppose this war from the jump. And there are many of those. Recent polls suggest it's like 2/3 of Ukrainians that want a negotiated settlement here. So Mearsheimer was right, John Mearsheimer, when he said that the U.S. and NATO led Ukraine down the primrose path. They made Ukraine believe everything's going to be all right with the U.S. at your back, with the EU countries at your back. Boris Johnson played into this too. But, that really just led them down the path of destruction, devastation, murder, in which about 1 million Ukrainians had to die. And they didn't have to. There was lots of off-ramps to this thing.
If there's ever an act of aggression against you in the future, that's our job to protect you. Where do you get off demanding something like that? And the real dynamic that's changed here, and I'll tell you, I think the main reason why the Hawks aren't talking about taking back Crimea and all of this stuff now, because they never thought they were going to do that. They just wanted to keep the war going as long as possible. That's always been the goal, is just to hurt Russia as much as possible. And if you got to sacrifice Ukraine in order to do that, then sure, let's do it. But the real reason why all this talk is changing now is because the Ukrainian people are done. They don't want to. I just saw another poll today. It's like right around 70%. 70% of the Ukrainian people want an immediate end to this thing, a negotiated settlement, meaning they're happy to give up some of their land to end this war.
Yeah, and that stands in stark contrast to all the propaganda we got for 3.5 years that said they're all ready to fight to the last men. Everyone wants to fight. Well, that was always fine with me as long as the U.S. wasn't financing it, as long as the U.S. taxpayer wasn't on the hook for it. But we are, to the tune of $200 billion. And this would be a little bit different if Zelenskyy was saying, hey, I want a security guarantee in Ukraine, a unilateral security guarantee from the United States in the future, and we'll repay you that $200 billion. That would be different. I wouldn't want to accept it still because I don't believe in entangling alliances. I think they always lead the U.S. into worse situations. We've seen that throughout the Middle East. We've seen that in Somalia and Yemen and Iraq and Syria and Israel, of course, in Libya. Now we see it in Ukraine. We see it in Taiwan to an extent, even with U.S. empire building schemes in the Pacific. It's always bad, but it would be different. It would actually carry some leverage if he was going to be willing to pay the U.S. back. Of course he isn't. There's nothing in this for the U.S. He doesn't have any cards and no wiggle room for negotiations, and it's actually pretty insulting for him to ask for that, I would say.
Don't want to do this anymore. They've seen what they were able to do with a blank check from the West, and they know they don't have that blank check anymore. Why the hell would they want to keep fighting this war? And they recognize that, like, hey, if you don't get this deal done with Vladimir Putin, and if Vladimir Putin decides that I can't work out a deal with these guys, then all of his incentives become to take as much territory as he can, because you're not working out a deal anyway. And so if you don't have a guarantee about what's going to happen with the other territory you don't take, you do have a guarantee if it's yours.
And this is cyclical too. This same thing arose at Istanbul when Putin wasn't even going to assume ownership over Zaporizhia or Kherson, only Donetsk and Luhansk, and come to an agreement with Zelenskyy. Apparently that agreement was worked out. Much of the particulars were, but Boris Johnson and the Biden regime talked him out of that. And now we're here at a different place where Russia has more property, trying to iron out a similar deal with similar, demands. No Ukraine and NATO, demilitarization, denazification, and Zelenskyy still doesn't want to take it. Well, what's the agreement that's going to come in 2027? Do you think Russia will have less or more territory occupied than they do today? I think it would be more if this war spills into 2027 and 2026.
And that's essentially what Vladimir Putin's been saying this entire time. Is his, not saying this is exactly right, but his argument has always been, he basically said, Ukraine can't be a part of the West. They don't have to be a part of Russia. This is what Vladimir Putin's been saying for over 20 years. Ukraine doesn't have to be a part of Russia, but they can't be a part of the West. They can be independent if they want to be. If like that's acceptable. We can accept neutrality. But if the choice is there is no neutrality and neutrality means you're a puppet of the West, then I'll just take it and it will be mine. Like if it's not going to be neutral, it will be mine. It's not, the options are neutral or mine, not yours. That's been Vladimir Putin's position this entire time. And listen, what we can hope for here is that seeing as how the Ukrainian people want none of this anymore, and seeing as how Zelenskyy is still not in a suit and tie and pissed off Donald Trump last time and looks like he might do it again, that maybe at least Vladimir Putin puffed up his ego, Zelenskyy is pissing him off, and at some point Donald Trump wipes his hand, washes his hands of this mess and goes, no, all right, we're not giving you a security guarantee. Give him the territory he's taken, and that's it. I'm not optimistic that we're there yet, but I am cautiously optimistic that might be sooner than later.
Yeah, he's a little bit more optimistic than me still. I think this is a convenient way for Trump to act like he's trying, but giving total veto power to Zelenskyy to say, no, that's not acceptable. We won't give up any territory. Our Constitution doesn't allow for it. And then to continue financing this madness. I mean, look, it doesn't matter to Americans who controls those 4 provinces, the oblasts. Most Americans probably can't even name those 4 oblasts. They might know the Donbass. They might know that there's a war in Ukraine. I'm not trying to be elitist about this, but that wasn't on the top of the American minds and American sensibilities going into this. This is a factor and a product of the obsessive nature that Washington has with war, with empire building schemes, with the types of programs that people like Ron Paul and Dennis Kucinich and Pat Buchanan always warned about. These foolhardy missions to expand the American empire in ways that doesn't benefit Americans whatsoever. We've already spilled in $200 billion to Ukraine. It hasn't gotten us anywhere. No matter how much money is spilled over there, how much intelligence is given to Zelenskyy, no matter how much the U.S. tries to manage the war itself from Germany, no matter how much Trump, threatens sanctions or secondary tariffs or talks a big game and says, Putin, I don't like what you just did in the attack on Truth Social. No matter how much that happens, it hasn't changed the conditions on the battlefield. That's why Putin's in the place that he is. His demands and his ass haven't changed. And I'm sorry, it's not just yielding to Putin by wanting to get the Americans out of this thing, wanting to get America out. That should be the default. Non-interventionism should be the default. Ukraine's territory isn't ours to give or defend. That should be the American viewpoint. Not that every inch of territory in the world is subject to police power by the United States to enforce what we want. That's not the way that the United States is supposed to operate, and operating in that direction has led us to this mess. So, yes, I hope Trump hammers out some kind of deal, and whether or not it's acceptable to Zelenskyy or not is effectively immaterial from the U.S. perspective if he truly wants to end the U.S. involvement in this. But the problem is, I think he wants to secure a peace more than he wants to end U.S. involvement in this. But hey, if he hammers out terms, slaps them on Zelenskyy's desk, and says take it or leave it, and Zelenskyy doesn't take it, I sure as hell hope he just walks away at some point. And we already know that U.S. missiles and ballistic missiles are in short supply. Dan Caldwell just talked about that recently with Glenn Greenwald as well. But there's just nothing in this for Americans anymore. This should have been the case for a long time. We're 7 months into Trump's presidency. He still hasn't done what it takes. And it's pledged, thankfully he did this on Truth Social, I saw the other day, said Ukraine will not be part of NATO. That's huge. That's the biggest ask from Russia, has been for basically 20 years, more than that, essentially. Demilitarization and denazification. Trump hasn't talked about those two things as much, but a security guarantee for Ukraine should be totally off the table. Wipe our hands clean of this. Don't get involved in more entangling alliances over this mess. that's where we're at, but I want to hear from you. Let me know, do you agree with Dave Smith on this? Let me know down below. Do you assume that a peace will come from this? Are we close? Are we far away still? Let me know down below. Please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Subscribe to Dave Smith also. And please consider becoming a YouTube member. If you click the join button below, you can help support the channel. And in return, I'll give you access to all my videos before they go live to the general public. And until I see you guys next time, no more war, no more debt, no more inflation, and no more empire. Peace out, guys. Catch you in the next one.